Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Joining me again today is Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, and you all know him well. He has been on our channel a few times, and he has done something amazing, and that is that he has written a letter to the Department of Justice and has been signed by all 5 Indian American congressmen and women in the current Congress. And let's talk to him a little bit about what this means, where this is going to lead to, and also a few other things. Here, let's welcome Congressman Raja. Namaskaram, sir. How are you?
Hey, namaskaram. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, sir. You look very good, and I can't, you're glowing in health. So it's just the first thought that came to my mind.
You sound like a politician, Sri, but thank you.
No, I'm not softening you up for a hardball here.
Okay, got it.
The question, sir, is that I was pleasantly surprised when I saw that letter that you had written to the Department of Justice, and you had all the 5 Indian American congressmen and women signed to it. And essentially, the gist of that was that there were a lot of attacks taking place across the United States of America on Hindu institutions, Hindu religious institutions, and what has the DOJ done about it? Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, many of our viewers may not be aware of the process that takes place when a congressman such as yourself writes a letter like this. Talk us through a little bit of the process involved and when you think some action will be taken. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Sri. Thank you for shining a light on what we did. Essentially, as you know, there have been a number of attacks on Hindu mandirs, temples across the country over the past couple of years. And, the 5 of us have been talking about it, and I decided it's time that we act and actually reach out to the Department of Justice, specifically Kristen Clarke, who's the head of the Civil Rights Division, and basically find out the status of the investigations that are ongoing with regard to the perpetration of what I consider to be hate-motivated acts with regard to these temples. And at this point, what the DOJ we've asked them to do is to give us a briefing by April 18th with regard to the status of investigations, what they've learned, and what they plan to do about the situation. Because as you know, there's a collective anxiety within the community with regard to what's happening, and we need to address it now.
Thank you so much, sir. And to be fair, Department of Justice and other government departments have been reaching out to communities. There's like a once every 2 months or 3 months, there is a meet with the people of the community where people come and air their concerns, and the government expresses what their action has been. So that engagement has been going on. Where things get a little out of shape is, are these acts an attempt to try and shine the spotlight on someone? They're just like an attention-grabbing thing, or is there real malice associated with it? Do you have any idea on that?
I don't. All I know is what I've seen in the published reports, what I've heard from community members who are, congregants or who belong to the different mandirs, devotees at the different temples. And I can't make heads or tails exactly of what's going on, and that's in part why we want to know from DOJ directly what they found. What I can say in general, that there has been a rise in anti-Hindu acts. I call it Hinduphobia. I actually put out a resolution in Congress talking about this particular issue in light of a study that came out from Rutgers University studying the subject. And unfortunately, there has been a rise in Hinduphobia. The Rutgers study actually identified different parts of the very extremist right that were involved in this. But we don't know exactly what is going on with these different mandirs. And so we're trying to get a better understanding of that.
Thank you, sir. And I'm sure the Department of Justice has obtained some CCTV videos of what happened, because it's something that most of the institutions these days have. So there's some idea is there of who came and who did what and so on and so forth. So thank you so much for taking the initiative, Congressman Raja. And since you are an expert on China, and I wanted to ask you a few things. Sure. In the last few weeks now, there has been some sort of a re-engagement of sorts. It started with, I think, President Xi Jinping visiting San Francisco, and then there was an Asia Pacific summit, I think, And then after that, things kind of went back into a lull. But then recently, there was, I think, a telephonic conversation between President Biden and President Xi Jinping. And today, if I'm not wrong, Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, is currently in China. Talk us through what is happening and where do you think things are headed as far as US-China relations are concerned?
Well, I think that they have somewhat stabilized over the past several months in light of this high-level dialogue that you referred to, whether it's the in-person meeting between President Biden and Xi Jinping or the visits of high-level dignitaries from the United States to China, including today's visit by Janet Yellen, our Secretary of Treasury, to China. That being said, I haven't seen major movement on the part of the Chinese with regard to reducing their aggression, either militarily or economically, and I'm looking for those steps. I think Janet Yellen has gone to China in part to deliver a very clear message to Beijing, which is if they intend to use their old playbook with regard to dumping goods, in this case, green goods, lithium-ion batteries, electric vehicles, solar panels, and the like on the rest of the world's markets, as they've done in the past with regard to aluminum or steel or electronic products, in an effort to drive out companies out of business, we're going to take countermeasures. And so we're already talking about this in Congress. We're sensitive to this issue. And as the ranking member of the Select Committee, I am very keen on making sure that the Chinese understand that we're not just going to sit idly by if they're going to continue to practice this economic aggression of dumping goods in different markets, because to me, that's not just an economic risk, it's also a national security risk, which I can get into, but we have to deal with that.
Congressman Raja, I think of me as a layman. I may not appear to be, but I have one question. The trade with China is happening for the most part, I'm told, using the Hong Kong dollar. So there is a intermediate currency. You have the US dollar that is pegged to the Hong Kong dollar. And from the Hong Kong dollar, things go into to China, where it's the RMB. One talk that was being made was that China might actually devalue their currency. Explain to us how you see the relationship between Hong Kong dollar and the RMB now that Hong Kong has been wholly annexed by China.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. The Hong Kong dollar is basically a form of Chinese currency at this point. But more importantly, if they decide to devalue the RMB, and right now it does appear to be weakening relative to the dollar, that'll obviously make their exports look less expensive than they might otherwise look. Now, as you know, we've had a long-standing concern in the United States that they artificially lower the value or depress the value of the RMB in order to promote export growth. But as I said earlier, we now know the playbook that the CCP uses, the Chinese Communist Party uses, which is they basically expand capacity, they create an overabundance of goods, far more than what the Chinese market would demand, and then they dump those goods using state subsidies on foreign markets, and in the process basically drive companies out of business. And we can't tolerate that anymore. I have to tell you, this is one of the great irritants in our relationship that Democrats, Republicans, everyone, all my constituents who are aware of this topic are very, very concerned about.
Now, while speaking of dumping of products, one other problem that China seems to have on its hand internally today is their real estate sector. How exposed do you think is the United States to this real estate sector? Are pension funds invested in some of these things, which ultimately got invested into the real estate? Your thoughts, sir?
The short answer is I don't know. We are still trying to untangle the extent to which our own what I called outbound investments, that's investments from the United States to China, are invested in different sectors. Although there's probably some exposure, though it's very limited. But I'm glad that you brought up the real estate sector, because that is tanking in China right now. A full $4 to $5 trillion of value has been taken away from the average, I'd say, Chinese property owner in aggregate. And just to give you a sense, 75% or 70 to 80% of Chinese net worth is invested in real estate. But just like everything else, Sri, they overproduced real estate. They just over invested in buildings and housing, in all aspects of real estate. And because of that, they created a bubble, and that bubble is bursting.
Somebody joked with me that there are 3 houses per Chinese family today. That's how much overbuilding is.
They don't have a safety net to speak of, the way that we in the United States might have with Social Security and so forth. They were heavily encouraged to invest in real estate. That would be their safety net as they got older. But as you can see, once that property bubble burst, people's net worth fell, their property values fell, and consumer confidence has really eroded dramatically, to the extent that now they're facing potential deflation, meaning people are just sitting around not buying things on the expectation that the prices are going to fall further. Well, as you know, that's a really very dangerous spiral for any economy. So that's why the government is so concerned about their economy internally. But what I'm saying to them is, look, your economy is in big trouble right now. You have 22% youth unemployment, by the way, $6 trillion of stock market value. Fully 50% of stock market value has disappeared over the past 3 years. You should focus on repairing your economy internally. And in order to do that, reduce your aggression toward your neighbors militarily and economically. That is the best way both to repair your economy, create more investor confidence, and, oh, by the way, leave us in a safer regional security situation as well.
Sir, I would be remiss if I don't ask you this question, and which is to do with TikTok. Is it true that TikTok came up in the discussion between President Biden and Xi Jinping?
Yes, that's right. It came up in the readout that I read and others have shared. Xi Jinping is keenly aware of TikTok. If anything is done with TikTok, he will be the decision maker. And as you know, I'm the co-author of the bill that passed with an overwhelming by.
Yes, you did. Congratulations.
Thank you. Basically forcing the divestment of TikTok from ByteDance. ByteDance is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. We don't want TikTok to disappear, but we do want CCP control of TikTok to disappear. It cannot operate the same way anymore for various reasons. And so I think President Biden made that clear in his phone call with Xi Jinping. I believe that has also come up in the discussions, or it will come up in the discussions with Janet Yellen. But that's very important to us for our security.
Sir, I have so many more questions to ask of you, especially about China, but I realize that you have a time constraint. But I'm going to ask you with last question. What I'm also hearing is China is becoming big into counterfeiting currency, as well as this chemical, things like crystal meth stuff, the ingredients that go into artificial drugs. This has become a huge problem. How do you see that to be curbed? Because these are all things that can be done in any kitchen these days, looks like.
Yeah, you're right about the, I guess they're called synthetic opioids. Yes. Synthetic opioids, the most commonly known synthetic opioid is fentanyl. And China is the largest source of what are called precursor chemicals that go into fentanyl. And they basically export it to Mexico, which then presses these into pills that are then basically smuggled into the U.S. We started a working group between the American and Chinese government to deal with this. I'd like to see much more action taken by the Chinese government to prevent the export of these precursor chemicals and equipment to the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico, which is basically the number one, manufacturer of fentanyl pills. I just think in general, the CCP if they want to control something, knows how to do it. They know how to control the spigot. And they need to do that not only with regard to fentanyl, by the way, but also illegal vapes. I'm talking about illegal e-cigarettes, the fruity flavored, kid-friendly flavored e-cigarettes that are poisoning our youth. 10% of high school students are vaping, and they're vaping basically disposable e-cigarettes from China that come here illegally. And as I said, are hooking our kids onto nicotine and kind of fueling the youth vaping epidemic, which I've also been kind of fighting. And so, by the way, in China, they don't have a fentanyl crisis. In China, they don't have a youth vaping epidemic. Instead, that is being exported to the United States. That's got to stop now.
Thank you so much, Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi. You've been very helpful and candid, and laying bare a lot of things that perhaps not many of us know. And good luck to you, sir, on the Hinduphobia bill. And I have no doubt in my mind you're going to come back to the Congress. I still would like to see you as a senator. It's got a nice ring to it. Congressman Raja, great. Senator Raja, greater. So, well, there is more after that. But thank you so much, sir. Namaskar.
Hey, thank you so much, Sri. I'm just seeking a contract extension, but thank you.